Hi friends, it's Sherry, the homespun wife, and I'm coming to you today to give you the recipe for the wheat bread that I made. It's honey wheat, it's really good, and it is just excellent, and you can freeze it, make it ahead and freeze it. And so here's the recipe. It's on this little brown card that is well used. Here is my bread machine. This is how I make my bread. I do not bake my bread in the bread machine because I just don't like it, and I don't know why, but I think it's because the crust is usually pretty hard when you bake in the bread machine, and I'm not that fond of that. So what I do is it takes about an hour and a half to set the setting on dough only, and so it'll do those couple of kneads and rises for you, and then when you take it out of the bread machine, you put it in your bread pan and let it rise for about 30 minutes, and then it's ready to bake. And you can bake that in your oven, in your loaf pan. It makes it a more optimal size for slicing up bread, and it also gives it a better texture in my view. So let me flip my camera around and show you how to make this bread. Okay, so here is my bread machine. It is a Sunbeam. This is the third bread machine that I have had in about 32 years, and they last a really long time when you get them, especially if you're only using them for the dough setting. And even though it's a little bit well worn up here, my little guide is starting to wear off. It's just a very handy machine to have, and I leave mine sitting out all the time, slid up under my cabinet right there, because that's how much I use it. Now, what you will need is 3/4 cups of milk, 6 tablespoons of water. You will need 3 tablespoons of butter, and I use real salted butter. And right here I just cut mine up into pieces. This allows the butter to melt more promptly. If you have it cut up in smaller pieces, it kind of aids in getting all that mixed into the flour. I use 3 tablespoons of brown sugar or honey. Now, I'm going to be using honey today. This is local honey, but if you do not have honey, you can use brown sugar, and it works just as well. And that's 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. You'll need 1½ tablespoons of the white sugar. You will need a teaspoon of salt, 2 cups of the whole wheat flour. You will need 1 cup of just the regular bread flour. Now you can see the flours that I use. Somebody had asked me, what flours are you going to be using so I can buy them up? I use typically whatever is on sale, but almost always, for some reason, a name brand. I don't know. I'm not crazy about buying a generic flour, and I don't know why. But anyway, this is the King Arthur whole wheat flour, and this is just the White Lily bread flour. I'm a big fan of White Lily. I don't know. I'm a good old Southern girl, and so I use White Lily flour a lot. And as you can see, this says ideal for bread machines. And so you would use 2 cups of this, and you'll use a cup of the bread flour, and then you will use a teaspoon of yeast. And what I'm using is this Fleischmann's bread machine yeast that comes in this bottle, and this lasts for a long time when you buy it. If you find that you end up making breads quite frequently, this is probably your best bet in expense in buying yeast, unless you're going to be making it a whole lot, and then you can go ahead and buy an even larger amount. And I'll leave this in the refrigerator once it's opened, and so this is equivalent to 16 envelopes of the yeast. And so I will put in a teaspoon of that, and I will put this in the order. I will put the liquid things in first. I have my milk and water in there now, and then I will put in my butter, and then my brown sugar and white sugar, salt, and then I'll put in the wheat flour, the regular bread flour, and the teaspoon of yeast. And I will set this on my machine. It's 8, as you can see here. 8 says dough, and this 3 hours will turn to 1 hour and 30 minutes, and that's how long it takes to get this bread ready to go into the pan. And here's the loaf pan that I use. Loaf pans like these. This is just a Wilton loaf pan. It is wonderful, and what I will do is I will just coat this with some spray, some olive oil spray, and I will take the dough right out of this pan here and put it into this one, and I will cover it up with a towel on the back of my stove and let it rise for about 30 minutes when it comes out. And when it comes out, I will show you how I do that. So let's get started making our bread. You hear that sound? That is the sound of my bread maker mixing my bread. Let me show you inside what it's doing. Now, if you want to double check your bread machine, depending on what kind of bread machine you have, just to make sure that this eventually gets into a nice smooth ball of dough, just lift it up and check, and you can add a little bit, like just a few drops of water or a few little sprinkles of flour, depending on whether it's too wet or too dry. But mine turns out perfectly every time. I never have to do that, so hopefully you won't either. As you can see, it's already starting to form and starting to get warm in there. I'm going to close this up so it will, and it'll melt down that butter, and I don't know if you can see it in there working, and it will get that form perfectly. And here is my clock on the front, and it's 1 hour and 29 minutes. And then when I take it out, I'll have about 30 more minutes of it rising in my loaf pan, and it'll be ready to go in the oven. Okay friends, my beeper just went off. It let me know that my dough is ready. I'm going to spray down my pan with this olive oil, and I'm going to take the dough straight out. You can see it in here. It's beautiful. I'm going to take it straight out, and it needs absolutely nothing to get it ready to throw into the pan. I'm just going to lay it in the pan like this. I'm going to shape it just a little bit. So it's going to rise, and it's going to be beautiful. Oops, let me get my camera just right. I'm not an expert camera person, I've noticed. I get carried away, and I just show you all kinds of things that you probably don't even want to see. But this is the bread. Now it's going to fill up this pan. I'm going to cover this up with a towel, and I'm going to sit it on the back of my stove. I'm going to carry it over there and sit it right here in kind of a dark place where it's warm over here in the corner, and I'm going to let that rise for about 30 minutes, and then I will take that cover off, and I will let you see that dough before we put it in the oven. Now we're going to bake this in the oven, and we're going to preheat it at 350, and it will probably take about 25 minutes to bake this loaf. Depending on your oven, it can be a little more or less, but we will bake it at 350. So I will let you see the dough before we put it in the oven. Here is the risen bread ready to go in the oven. I've got my oven preheated to 350. Now, as you can see, this bread is not risen all the way to the top of the pan, and that is because this is primarily a wheat loaf. When you use 2 cups of whole wheat flour, you are using some heavy flour, and we're not using anything to compensate for that, an additive into the flour. And so if you swap this out and use 2 cups of the regular bread flour with just 1 cup of whole wheat, this bread would probably be risen all the way to the top of this pan. And that's just the difference in having a loaf that is primarily whole wheat. But I really love it because unlike other whole wheat breads that I've tried, this one is super soft. And so you can use it for sandwiches, and it is really, really good. I'm about to have a piece from my previous loaf with some butter on it. I'll show that to you, but I'm getting ready to put this in the oven. It's preheated to 350, and like I say, I'll leave it in there about 25 minutes, and I'll show it to you when it comes out. Here is my piece of buttered bread. Does that not look wonderful? It is so soft and good. My butter is really softened. It's been sitting on the counter all day. In this crock pot right now, I'm going to show it to you. I'm making a turkey breast. And this is a turkey breast that I got at Aldi, and you're advised to leave the netting on the turkey breast while it's cooking, so that's why the netting is on there. But my house smells so, so, so good right now. It really does. And with this, I think I'm going to have some green peas and some cranberry sauce and some stuffing, some cranberry stuffing as well. And we're going to have fresh bread, and it's going to be yummy, yummy, yummy. And can't wait to eat because it smells like Thanksgiving in here. Here we go, friends. There is the wheat loaf. It just came out of the oven. It smells so good. You can see it rose a little bit in the process of baking. Now what I'm going to do is I'm fixing to flip this out onto my cutting board and just let you see what it looks like out of the pan. And there you have it, friends, your fresh bread, and it is so beautiful. It always comes right out of that pan perfectly. And what I will do is I will allow this to cool, and then I will probably, in this case, I will put it in a freezer bag with using my Ziploc sealer, and I will put that in the freezer and have it at a later date since we still have a little bread left from the last time I baked.
And this will be one for a little bit down the road, maybe on a day when we're very busy, but we can still have fresh baked bread from home. And I hope that you guys find that this recipe works as beautifully for you as it did for me. Please just leave me a comment below if you try it out and you really like it. I would look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much, friends. Have a great day. Bye-bye.